And joining us now is Deborah Tavares. Deborah, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, David. Again, this is Deborah Tavares with StopTheCrime.net, and I also run the website primarywater.org. For our latest interviews, including what you're going to hear now, we do post these on StopTheCrime.net on our Odyssey video channel. Now, I'm going to be covering some fairly harsh information today, extremely harsh, actually. And we're going to need to know these things. So we must do all we can to be harder to kill, because we are the enemy. Again, I will repeat that. We must do all we can to be harder to kill. We are the enemy. So we're going to go over a bulletin that many of you may not have seen, but you need to maybe take a look at it. It is from Homeland Security. The date issued was February the 7th of 2022. The topic is called the National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin, and this expires on June the 7th of 2022. And it tells you this: the primary terrorism-related threat to the United States continues to stem from lone offenders or small cells of individuals who are motivated by a range of foreign and or domestic grievances, often cultivated through the consumption of certain online content. The grievances of violence, extremist ideologies, false or misleading narratives, and conspiracy theories have all and will continue to contribute to the heightened threat of violence in the United States. Now, I will add, violence is being increased massively because of the increased frequencies. And we will have lone wolf terrorists that are being electronically controlled remotely. We have to keep that in mind at all times. This document also goes on to say that as COVID-19 restrictions continue to decrease nationwide, increased access to commercial and government facilities and the rising number of mass gatherings could provide increased opportunities for individuals looking to commit acts of violence to do so, often with little or no warning. Meanwhile, COVID-19 mitigation measures, particularly COVID-19 vaccine and mask mandates, have been used by domestic violent extremists to justify violence since 2020 and could continue to inspire these extremists to target government, healthcare, academic institutions that they associate with these measures. Also, domestic violent extremists have also viewed attacks against the United States critical infrastructure as a means to create chaos, advance ideological goals, and have recently aspired to disrupt the U.S. electric and communications critical infrastructure, including by spreading false, misleading narratives about 5G cellular technology. Now I'm going to add this. You can look this up for yourselves, but let's be perfectly clear. We are the enemy. The frequencies are being used, and the taking down of the electric and the communications is being done. It's an inside job. We know that we're having massive power shutdowns, and we, again, must do all we can to survive this unacknowledged reality that we all live in. I recently sent this out, and I want to underscore throughout this transmission today that we should do absolutely no harm. No harm. So I sent this out a few days ago, and it was about the general theme of protesters. And this is going to go into our discussion today because we talk about protesters. And I said maybe, just maybe, protesting starts out grassroots by patriots and concerned folks who will stand for freedoms they don't have. Therein lies the fact. Will stand for freedoms they don't have. Then CIA and others infiltrate, steal the movement. An example, now in Canada, They must stop the truckers to make a statement to other groups planning the same, clamping down on us while we are murdered, tornadoes, tsunamis, frequencies, floods, foods, inoculations, cell towers, sustainable development and climate change schemes. You can add to this list, and I wish you would. Our homes, our planet is being poisoned to death. We are being poisoned to death. We will not survive in this circular economy, and I invite all of you to look that up. I discussed that in last week's show. It is a circular economy that we are in. We're in the middle of that as people, and it is shrinking all around us. So we can't survive in this circular economy we have been captured in. The banksters are accelerating the transition into the real economy of climate change schemes by only lending on the green agenda. The Sustainable Development Genocide plans have been fast-tracked. We are being financed and poisoned off this planet. We do not survive. Prepare. Become as self-reliant as possible with your water, your electricity, your food, grow gardens and greenhouses. Do whatever you can. We are the human family. Help those you can and do no harm. Go again to stopthecrime.net and learn more. The video that we did last week, David, is on stopthecrime.net, and it's entitled 5G, New Humans, Accelerating Transition to Net Zero, Brain Invasion, and more. So I want to talk about a couple of things, and then I'm going to get into a book that was a horrific situation, but I want to say this right now. The headlines in my paper today says this: our drought is the worst in 1,200 years. U.S. West. Scientists find global warming the key factor in severity. The extreme dryness that has ravaged the American West for more than 2 decades now ranks as the driest 22-year period in at least 1,200 years. And scientists have found that this mega drought is being intensified by humanity's heating of the planet. We are the enemy. Prepare. We are identified as the enemy. We are doing this. We're being told that. So today is Tuesday. It is February 15th of 2022. I'm going to cover a couple other things, but more in depth on our next radio show, David, because I want to talk about as above, so below. We're going to be posting more on the internet of underwater things and what is now being done to our oceans. It is extremely important to understand they're now calling our oceans smart oceans. And here's a little bit of what that involves. It is the internet of underwater things. The internet of underwater things. Now, I will add this. Years back, I went to a fish hatchery, and they were using an X-Acto knife to make a little incision at the tails of these little salmon, little tiny baby salmon, and they were putting in chips. The chips were about the size of a long grain rice, and they'd throw them back in the little area, and then they would release them. And I asked them, "How are you tracking these fish?" And they said at the time that they had deployed transponders and receivers along the creek edges to follow and track the fish and the salmon. So now we have the internet of underwater things being unveiled. We need to understand what this is. Again, we are being decimated. So as you protest and you say nothing about controlled weather, even if we can't do anything about that, and we cannot, it is unacknowledged. We are being murdered by events that are unacknowledged. But if you decide to mob it out and protest, thinking you've got rights, at least hold some readable signs that say something real, like climate change is fomenting weather, in unlivable weather conditions, and climate change is weather weapons. Say that. What on earth is everyone doing? But now we have the Internet of Underwater Things, and it's invasive and dangerous, and the initiative that has been quietly unfolding now for a number of years. They're calling it Smart Oceans. And there's a paper in 2012, the Internet of Underwater Things as defined as a worldwide network of smart, interconnected underwater objects that enables to monitor vast, unexplored water areas. So I hope you all realize why the fish are literally beaching themselves on the beaches, why we have massive die-off in the desert. And I don't know how many of you saw a huge swath, I mean a thick swath of blackbirds in Mexico in the last few days, apparently hit by frequencies. They were flying away, it appeared, and then many tumbled to the ground. So we're as above, so below. So we have to understand they're introducing underwater devices that communicate long distances through acoustic waves, deafening marine life, as well as installing nodes and devices at the ocean floor, scattering numerous underwater vehicles and robots all over the ocean, creating electromagnetic interfaces. Electromagnetic interfaces. Here are a few things you can look up, and I will dedicate an entire show to this. Again, I am a boat person. I lived on the ocean. This is near and dear to my heart as I now watch the oceans being absolutely destroyed, such as the land that we live on as well. But the objective of the European Sunrise, look this up, the Sunrise Initiative, is to provide the missing tools for an unprecedented monitoring and exploration of marine environments by extending the concept of the Internet of Things to marine environments. They talk about how the promise of oil and gas exploration, speaking, and of course they're talking against sustainability, but this is what they're doing. They're harvesting the resources, monitoring of waterways and marine environments, providing renewable energy through offshore wind turbines, sustainable use of the ocean resources. There is absolutely no way that renewable energy will run our countries. Renewable energy is not reliable because they control the weather. And in fact, all of the wind turbines and many other operational renewable energy equipment that they are deploying now takes thousands and thousands of acres. And the frequencies are disruptive even on land. But it's important to note that according to Forbes, the Internet of Underwater Things was awarded, this is DARPA. This is DARPA's Ocean of Things. And according to Forbes, DARPA was awarded a contract for the next phase of development of its Ocean of Things, a project to seed the seas with thousands of floating sensors, monitoring everything that passes from aircraft to submarines, monitoring everything. In their own words, DARPA's Oceans of Things program seeks to enable persistent maritime situational awareness over large ocean areas by deploying thousands of small, low-cost floats that form a distributed sensor network. Each smart float contains a suite of commercially available sensors to collect environmental data such as sea surface temperature, sea state and location, as well as activity data about commercial vessels, aircraft, and even maritime mammals moving through the area. The floats transmit data periodically via satellite to a cloud network for storage and real-time analysis. Here's another project, CNET project. And in 2018, the CNET project was introduced to the public in the United States, funded by the U.S. National Science Foundation to develop an open platform for flexible experimentation with underwater networked systems. Now, I'm going to conclude what they're now doing to the ocean, because the ocean is highly toxic, and I can't underscore enough. All of you must do everything you can to be less able to be killed. We're going to talk about the American bar, and that all the lawyers now are converging for their expertise to create a sustainable economy and provide pro bono legal services to fight climate change. Lawyers are pushing to reform state law, and we'll need 5 times the lawyers and accountants, environmental consultants. We need all to arms in the professional services. We are under attack by the bar card carrying lawyers that do the dirty work and have bar cards for the British Accreditation Regency. And they say we need a call to arms in the professional services. They go on about how they're mobilizing the teams of over 125,000 legal advocates to help local governments shift to 100% renewable energy, which will make a massive impact on meeting Biden's pledge. A climate competent lawyer cannot ignore how climate change and its consequences are altering legal and human rights responsibilities of business enterprises and financial institutions. We need to understand what is being done to us. We are being destroyed. And the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, established in August of 2021, made it clear that the scale of the challenge involved in limiting the rise in average global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is, you see the numbers required, 5 times the wind deployments, 5 times the solar deployments, we're being told by lawyers. We will need 5 times the lawyers, the accountants, the environmental consultants. We need a call to arms in the professional services. We are the enemy, and we're under mass attack. And while many of you feel good being out and talking against what you believe is literally constricting your rights, you don't have any rights. We have been taken, and there's too much momentum. So we now must do all we can to survive. I'm going to go over this quickly, and then I'm going to get into a book. This is incredible, and you must understand. They're saying that we must achieve net zero by 2050. So when I dug into that definition, so I could explain it to all of you, here's what I found. It's too little, too late. And we will not achieve the long-term temperature goals identified in the Paris Agreement to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. So net zero, it's not enough. It's not enough. Now, I hope you are all hearing me. I hope you are hearing me. Because I could go further into that, but there is so much more for me to cover right now. Because this is critical, and I'm going to be making a book recommendation right now. I hope that all of you read this book. You may find it extremely controversial to your propagandized points of view. But I will tell you, The Great American Adventure, The Secrets of America, is a political history of government and law by Judge Dale, a retired judge. And and it's important to understand. I will do a brief report on this book that resulted in my extreme bullying online and direct targeting. My dear friend and I discussed this book on various radio shows throughout the years about this expose. She died unexpectedly in June of 2019. All is a lie. All of it. So the more patriot movements we have in believing that you can stand up for your rights, understand you need to survive. You need to do all you can to help your neighbors. You must live in right conduct each day at a time. So I'm going to go over this book. We'll spend more time in it as well down the road, David, because this is exceedingly important. But The Great American Adventure, The Secrets of America, and that is a free download from stopthecrime.net, by the way. And you can send it to a printer and have them copy it for you. And I would recommend everyone get a copy of this. Treat it like a textbook study book and start reading it. It's going to be horrific for most of you. Horrific. But once you understand, you will understand. We're out of time. The Secrets of America is an extremely important work that all Americans need to comprehend. It is an easy to understand overview of U.S. history and our legal system. What we are taught in school, the deviant creation of the global elite, who have used their ability to create and control money for centuries to enslave each and every single one of us worldwide. They're admitted in the technical manual of the U.S. Air Force, 1979, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, which we will also discuss further at a later date, which is extremely important. I've been covering silent weapons for quiet wars for many, many years. So has my deceased friend. And that's actually the very first chapter in a book, Behold a Pale Horse. So a very quick breakdown of the experience has proven that the simplest method of securing a silent weapon and gaining control of the public is to keep the public undisciplined and ignorant of the basic system by disengaging our minds, disengaging emotions, rewriting history and law, and exposing the public to a deviant creation. And many of you have heard this. This is a quote by William Casey, director of the CIA, in 1981. Well, no, our disinformation campaign is complete when absolutely everything the American people believe is false. And I would say everything that the global populations believe is false. So let's get into this a little bit right now because we have quite a bit to cover. And it's interesting what we're told in this book, but I will say this, it is time to grow up, America. Look around you. Look at your lives. They have eliminated the family farms, the local stores, placed us into cities, given our industry away, used valueless currency, and stolen our gold and silver. They keep raising taxes and have involved us in stage wars and begun a massive foreclosure of American homes and poisoned our air and public water supplies. And this would be worldwide. So important to understand what followed the 1933 bankruptcy in the United States. These acts also established the requirements of licensing. And then with the enactment of the Trading with the Enemy Act under the War and National Defense and Confiscation Act, the Reconstruction Act and the Lieber Code were all tied together to create a secret fascist government here in the United States. This is what we have. Wake up. On page 102 of The Great American Adventure by Judge Dale, You'll read this. The federal and state governments are not real. They are all privately owned corporations called government, and the law is nothing more than their corporate regulations called statutes. So let's talk about some of the aspects of this book and why everybody needs to download it and read it now. Because I know that you're all feeling trampled upon, and that's because you are. When I read this threat bulletin from the United States and Homeland Security, and I read that we're the targets, you better believe we're the enemy. So, here's the foreword. The following information provided by Judge Dale, a retired federal judge, is extremely important for all Americans. Since the founding of our country, the elite and the robber baron partners have fabricated our history, taken control of our economy, and altered our form of government and legal system. Judge Dale describes the people and events responsible for America's current state of increasing deterioration. And I don't think anyone could argue our increasing deterioration. But I will say, your protesting that we're seeing all over the world is meaningless. We're seeing what's happening now. Those that protest are now being considered terrorists. So,
yeah, that's right.
It is critical that we come to understand and accept that what has passed for public education in America has merely been indoctrination. Judge Dale exposes information that is not in our history books and reveals how we can best defend ourselves from the current parasitical corporate government and injustice system. But first, people need enough courage to face a very harsh reality. So I'm going to just flip through some of this book now. I'm looking at part 1, page 1. The success of the private corporation relies heavily upon the ability of its slave drivers, identified as the chiefs of staff, politicians, bankers, judges, priests, and lawyers, to convince teachers, policemen, soldiers, and the general public of its authenticity. Now, I thought this was pretty profound, and I think many of you will as well. This is in the book, and this is on page 6. They talk about the historical civilian government promised by the Constitution of the United States of America never existed, nor did it ever have a chance of succeeding, courtesy of President George Washington and the Continental Congress. President George Washington, the reputed father of our country, cleverly overthrew the organic Constitution of the United States of America using the Articles of Confederation, and then reinstated the privately owned colonial corporation of the Virginia colony. Keep in mind, the United States is a colony. We're not sovereign. Now listen to this. George Washington installed a military government, which is concealed in plain sight. Listen to this. Commander-in-Chief, Attorney General, Secretary General, Auditor General, Surgeon General, Postmaster General, and many others. The Constitution was a well-written document which was copied from the Iroquois Federation government. Many of the safeguards found in the organic Constitution were added by the Founding Fathers to bind the hands of other delegates because none of them trusted each other, which proves the old proverb, there is no honor among thieves. So backing up, this is important. What would be your first reaction, and I think of this all the time, if Judge Dale was to prove to you that 2 elected presidents of the United States were never American citizens, and were elected under an alias or assumed name. The first man was German national and atheist and former Nazi SS naval officer and the former director of the Nazi intelligence agency called Odessa, Odessa. The second man was a South African national and is a Marxist, a racist, and anti-Christian. This is a disparaging fact to hear or read about, especially since colonial America was founded, presumably, upon Christian people seeking freedom from religious prosecution. People who just wanted to be left alone, which made them an easy mark for unscrupulous men. Also, would it interest you that the first CIA agency for the United States was completely staffed with former Nazi SS and OSA officers with the blessings of President Harry Truman and the United States Congress? And they placed World War II flying ace, Wild Bill Donovan, in a figurehead position as director in order to sell the CIA to the American public? Would it shock or even concern you to learn that the Patriot Act is a carbon copy of the Nazi Constitution of the 1940s? Would it shock you? It should not. Look at what is happening to us, to all of us. History suggests that Allies defeated the Nazi war machine when in fact Churchill and Hitler were close friends and Masonic brothers. Queen Elizabeth called Adolf Hitler uncle. Adolf's real name was Baron Rothschild, and he was a member of the European royal family. Didn't you ever wonder why the Queen's royal palace was never touched during the Nazi aerial bombings of England? Two investigative journalists uncovered these facts, and when they attempted to expose Churchill and Elizabeth, they were arrested and imprisoned for 33 years without formal charges or a trial. And did you know that shortly after World War II, the German surrender and the government of the United States secretly repatriated 155,000 Nazi SS and OSA officers into the United States in 1945 under Operation Paperclip? Now, many of you know this. And the average immigrant now in America today is forced to suffer all kinds of hurdles, pitfalls, prejudice, and propaganda to finally be accepted under U.S. immigration laws that countermand the basic principles and guarantees of the Declaration of Independence. And how would you feel about President George W. Bush if you knew that he issued 2 executive orders as president, which, number 1, made all American presidents the official dictator of America, and number 2, permits pharmaceutical companies to release new drugs and vaccines to the public without performing the usual battery of safety tests. The same executive order also releases the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, of any liability for approving such new pharmaceuticals and vaccines for distribution and sale to the general public. Did you know that George W. Bush did that to you? Well, now you do. This is on page 3. Would it interest you to know that all but 4 U.S. presidents and 98% of all of our U.S. congressmen have been serving as political decoys and official slave drivers for the European royals and elite masters? The cost of campaigning for election to the office of president or for a seat in Congress has intentionally been made untouchable and exorbitant in cost, except for millionaires. The purpose and intent is to discourage the average American citizen from overstepping our class boundaries in an attempt to secure one of those political posts. There is a huge disparaging class difference in America. And I will say we know this, and that is being fomented, even though we are all the same. Whatever race or ethnicity we are all part of the human family. Would you feel just a little bit ignorant to learn that the Republican and Democratic Party is another political fraud, and that these political parties are actually the product of one large political conspiracy? All of the candidates chosen for the highest positions in government are not chosen by party members or the public, but a pre-selected by the royal and elite. In each approved candidate must swear an allegiance to and render a pledge to adhere to the demands of the corporate directors and masters. Did you know that? That would now make sense why, and all of you can verify this for yourselves, but all of your local agencies, your local school boards, your health departments, your city councils, your county boards and supervisors, they are all corporations. They do not serve you. I've been saying this for years. And even your so-called right to vote in America is actually about slave registration. Every applicant is asked if they are a United States citizen or other. A United States citizen is defined in all law dictionaries as a corporate entity. Your vote really means nothing during an election because the electronic voting machines are all rigged. They are all rigged.
Yeah.
The manual tabulation process was eliminated via the Bush and Gore elections as unreliable. And besides, the Electoral College actually chooses the candidates, regardless of the vote count. This was the real reason behind the creation of the Electoral College. The whole Bush versus Gore event that occurred in Florida was a well-planned and staged event to eliminate the paper ballot cards and manual tabulations. I hope you're hearing this. This is on page 4. The use of racist remarks and displays of racism is also planned by the royal and elite to divert attention away from their true purpose. Racism is used heavily and well in America to divert the attention of the masses because most of us are very easily distracted. The real truth is that there is no difference between the masses, but as a collective group. The slave drivers couldn't control us, and so racism is used to divide and conquer all of us. We are being played in a rigged system. Always live each day in good conduct, one day at a time. I'm adding that. The federal government's usual motive of operation is to cause a problem, blow it out of proportion in the media, and then provide for and adopt a remedy that only they can control. This is never the exception, but rather the general daily rule. And each time a little more of our humanity and liberty is subtly stolen by government without the public even taking notice of it, most people are easily entertained and distracted, which is the same reason why people are so fascinated with musicians and hypnotists. Now, I won't go into it here. I'm going to continue with some more. But you might be very interested in reading what major sports events are really all about. And because we just had the Super Bowl here in California, it might be of great interest. I'm not going to read that right now. I'm going to rely on all of you to download the Great American Adventure Secrets of America, which literally, as I told you, got me massively bullied and set upon. I cannot tell you the harm that disclosing this caused. So I'm passing this on to all of you so that you can understand your reality. Don't fight amongst one another. Do not support one another. There's too much inertia, and we are seriously way out of time. America's judiciary are smaller corporate branches called courts. The judges are actually business administrators called judges, and all of America's laws are civil corporate regulations called statutes. People are treated as corporations in these courts, and these so-called bastions of justice are all about commerce and fraud. Everyone needs to be on the same page, and so precedents become their safety benchmark. This next question doesn't constitute any proof, but Judge Dale says, think about it. If American judges truly are good guys, which they're of course not, why don't they all wear white robes instead of black? The answer is because black is the pagan traditional color for Illuminati priests, which will make more sense to you as you read on through his expose. Important to know, the local police and prosecutors are not in place to serve and protect the American public or any public anywhere, but to the contrary. They are structured to protect the slave drivers, the banksters, and the private United States corporations by enforcing its corporate statutes against the corporate enemy, the American citizen. Most of these police officers haven't a clue about how they have been indoctrinated and manipulated. They are so naive and well-meaning that they actually believe they are preserving and protecting the public. The politicians, prosecutors, judges, priests, clerks know the truth, and many of them increase their personal spoils with every conviction. They make money on every conviction. Yes, the Vatican judges, prosecutors, and clerks make money off of every conviction and lawsuit, and their clearinghouse for all these private spoils is located in the Texas Federal Reserve under an account titled the CRIS Fund, C-R-I-S Fund. You can look that up. Now, this is from Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. I've gone over this relentlessly over the years. We will do this again, David, but it's very, very important to understand. This is on page 5 of Judge Dale's The Great American Adventure. Politicians hold many quasi-military jobs, the lowest being the police, which are soldiers, the attorneys and CPAs next, who are spies and saboteurs and licensed, and the judges who shout orders and run the closed union military shop for whatever the market will bear. The generals are industrialists. The presidential level of commander-in-chief is shared by the international bankers. And this is on page 38 of Quiet Weapons for Silent War. If our police officers would simply invest a little energy and time to research and read something other than nonsensical books and mechanic books, or to host a few local police meetings, they would discover that the amended version of the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1933 by President Franklin D. Roosevelt specifically identifies the American citizen as the enemy of the federal government. The fraud and deception perpetrated by these slave drivers works well as long as they can maintain their deception and manipulation. How long, guys, are we going to allow this is the question. That's the question. In fact, in reality, the historical civilian government promised by the Constitution of the United States of America never existed, nor did it ever have a chance of succeeding, courtesy of President George Washington. in the Continental Congress. President George Washington, the father of our country, presumably, cleverly overthrew the organic Constitution of the United States of America using the Articles of Confederation, and then reinstated the privately owned colonial corporation of the Virginia colony. I bet you've never heard that the American Indians were governed by an emperor named Mao Toy, T-O-Y, and enjoyed a federation government. We were all falsely taught that the red race were just savages. The Iroquois Indians are the architects of the universal postal system of the world. Did you know that?
No.
And I bet you never knew that the red race of America are the only known living descendants of the continent of Atlantis. Did you know that? Which sunk into the Atlantic Ocean around 9600 BC. The overthrow of the Constitution by President Washington was no real loss to America because the Constitution had actually been converted into a business plan designed to benefit the Founding Fathers and not the American people. This information may not correspond with the material that was pounded into all of our brains during our forced public education, but it is a fact nonetheless. America factually continued to operate under the privately owned corporation of the Virginia colony until March 9th of 1933. That corporation was dissolved by President Franklin Roosevelt upon the passage of the Emergency Banking Act, and at which time he instituted a new privately owned corporation called the United States Inc. Now, I've been saying this for years. The United States Inc. is traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We are a business which is registered in France and recorded under the Vatican Corporation of Rome. Did you know that? The term, the United States of America, never got off the ground, and its fictitious name fraudulently used by the masters and slave drivers because it conforms to the same educational material that society has been indoctrinated with, and because it appeases the ears and minds of the patriotic public. America was guaranteed a public education, but never guaranteed a truthful education, as Shakespeare once wrote, and therein lies the rub. According to the Articles of Confederation, the phrase, "we the people," is defined to mean "we the delegates," which refers only to the politicians and not the public, which proves again that the Constitution of the United States of America was never intended to protect or serve any of us. There are several early administrative court rulings which confirm this conclusion. Factually, the concept of government constitution known as the United States of America has not existed since the passage of the Declaration of Independence. Now, this is critical because we're being attacked by the bar, again, British Accreditation Regency, and we are going to be driven into absolute asset stripping as climate change rules, regulations correspond with the genocide plans of sustainable development and climate change goals. The bar has set up already, right now, what they need. And I'm going to just go over some things I pulled off the bar, and then I will get back in to the book. So it's important to understand that what does a climate lawyer do? Providing legal advice to community members and environmental groups, writing submissions to government inquiries, and providing oral evidence, consulting, and advising agencies, researchers, and scientists. An environmental lawyer works to represent clients in legal issues such as in clean technology, water law. I'm going to stop. The water law that they are writing in is going to eliminate your use of water because they are denying you the fact that water is a renewable. It has all been commoditized. It is all part of a business. And they talk about also that the environmental lawyer works to represent climate change law and the management of our land. Ever wonder about what's happening to your land rights? You have no land rights. Let's get real here. Let's understand what we have. Let's stand for what is real, not what is false. The latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report published in August of 2021 made it clear that the scale and the challenge involved in limiting the rise in the average global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We can't reach that. We've been told that. Now let's find out what lawyers make. And this is very important. This is not advocating that you work for Rothschild against every single one of us. But the salaries of environmental lawyers in the U.S. range from $35,000 to $799,000, with a median salary of $168,000. The middle 57% of the environmental lawyers makes between $168,000 and $378,000. The demand for environmental lawyers is growing about as fast as average, with 9% growth expected over the next 10 years. You are being trounced up on by Rothschild bar-carrying, card-carrying lawyers that write the statutes and have taken this country down by writing rules and regulations for Rothschild. Make no mistake. Let's talk about Project Drawdown, and then I'll get back into the book. Project Drawdown. They say their mission is to help the world reach drawdown, the point in the future when levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere stop climbing and start to steadily decline, thereby stopping catastrophic climate change as quickly, safely, and equitably as possible. There is no such thing as drawdown without massive murdering of hundreds and thousands of people worldwide. The group of lawyers recommended changing state laws so that decisions about water rights, including appeals for new diversions from streams and rivers, all of you farmers, listen to this, would require regulators to consider the effects of climate change. So diverting water to water your lands is now going to be considered part of climate change. With the heating of the planet bringing more extreme droughts, the legal experts say there is an urgent need to change how states and administrators issue water rights and to start monitoring in real time how much water is taken from the rivers. In real time. Why do you think you're getting the wireless smart water meters? That's just to monitor the turnoff in your homes. We're in trouble, gang. We're in serious trouble. So let's go on into the book. I'm looking at page 8. As you can see, I haven't gotten very far, and I don't have that much more time.
No.
But let's talk about this. Everything in America is about contracts. And it is our burden as Americans to make government perform honorably. I will add this. It is no longer possible to make government perform honorably. We are wrapped in policies of climate change and sustainable development goals in every single city, in every single thing. The American Bar Association is a foreign union. Did you know that? And its members are all working in collusion with Israel, the British Empire, the Vatican, the Rothschild and Rockefeller banking empires, Congress and the elite to undermine America. All attorneys are agents of a foreign power who swear allegiance to their foreign power, the Queen of England. The Queen of England.
Yeah.
It's
Still
no
a British
wonder.
colony.
Yes. It's no wonder that when I did a video a number of years ago called Kill Cities by Rothschild and Rockefeller, because the documents that I was explaining were from Rothschild and Rockefeller. And that video was taken down even before videos were being taken down. You can still find it. And I was actually written up in the Post. A poor representative in the city council in Washington, D.C., Trayon White, you can look him up, Trayon White. He divulged the details of my video during an open session of a city council meeting. This poor black man was lambasted and bullied into apologizing beyond what an apology should ever be for telling the truth. You can type that in, Trayon White and Deborah Tavares. It's very, very sad, guys. This is why all lawyers must file a written notice of appearance in every court case they represent. By that notice, the lawyer is admitting to the court that he is a foreign agent and he is requesting permission to represent you in that corporate court. Your contract with the lawyer gives him your sovereign power of attorney to represent your best interest, and he immediately uses it against you by admitting to the judge that you will accept the jurisdiction and decisions of the corporate court. So much for winning your case on any appeal. The U.S. Bar Association is actually a branch of the National Lawyers Guild of the Communist Party. Let me read that again. The American Bar Association is actually a branch of the National Lawyers Guild of the Communist Party, which can only be located in the hard copy printing of 26 USC 3002. And they continue with that section. This is on page 8.
And we're going to have to stop it. Unfortunately, we are out of time, Deborah, for today. But we'll pick this up again next week because I'm really interested in more about this book. Unfortunately, we didn't get there until now. But the other information about about what's happening here is incredibly important. Please promote your website and your Odyssey channel, please.
Yes, Deborah Tavares with StompTheCrime.net. Please go to our Odyssey channel. And this is only about a 120-page book. Please download it. The Great American Adventure by Judge Dale. Do not let this be snuffed from view. You are not intended to know about your reality, but you must, because in order to be less able to be killed, you need to know what you really face. And David, I want to thank you, all of those that are listening. This is absolutely not to scare you. Absolutely not. This is to empower you with the truth so that you can become resilient, which I hate that word. But we have been being told now throughout the world, because of climate change, we must become resilient. We are being hit by weather weapons, and our survivability truly does rely on resiliency, how best we can survive with attacks that are unacknowledged. Again, David, thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to coming up again next week.
Me too. Thanks so much, Deborah. Appreciate it very much.